Hey, it's me, the mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart. Hey, check out my new tag team, baby, Monty and the Pharaoh.
Hey, Jimmy, don't forget to tell them about Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast.
Well, you know what, I would, but you already did it.
It's Monty and the Pharaoh.
The Monty and Pharaoh Show.
Monty and Pharaoh, bro.
Monty and the Pharaoh. The Monty and the Pharaoh.
You've got the future Hall of Famer, that rocker, Marty Jannetty, MJ in the house, and I'm sitting here with two more future Hall of Famers, Monty and the Pharaoh. We're doing that stuff and we gonna rock it.
Monty and the Pharaoh.
It's Monty and the Pharaoh.
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 And Monty and the Pharaoh. Oh, is it Monty and the Pharaoh?
Monty and the Pharaoh.
Monty and the Pharaoh.
Hey, cut music. When you want the best in professional wrestling, Long Island, there's only one place you're going to get it, right here.
Monty and the Pharaoh. Now, that's not just the coolest, and that's not just the best. That, my friends, is just incredible.
Monty and the Pharaoh. Duh.
Hey! Not get to call off the Russian Nightmare! And you're watching the #1 show on Long Island with Monty and the Pharaoh.
So the world found out yesterday that we have impeached President Trump for a second time. Thoughts on that?
Impeach me 2 times. I'm getting out. Bye, 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 bye. See ya.
All right, welcome to Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast out of Indie Music TV. So the world found out yesterday that we have impeached President Trump for a second time. Thoughts on that?
Impeach me 2 times. I'm getting out. Bye, 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 bye. See ya.
Bruiser Brody was an incredible wrestler.
I love Bruiser Brody, absolutely. Absolutely. I always looked forward to when I could read about him in the mags because we did not have exposure to him all the time. The mags were our chance to see what's going on in other places. Brody was always a fascinating subject to read about, and he was always main eventing something. So he was top of the card. He looked like a bad. He wrestled like a bad. He talked like a bad. He was a bad. And I always wonder why on earth it didn't get to the WWF at some point in a much bigger and better program, even into the 80s, but we can get to that.
Well, we'll get to that.
What else you got for me?
Let's talk about Brody, though. Let's talk about his biggest weakness, I believe, as a professional wrestler.
Okay.
Bruiser Brody's refusal to lose, or not, I don't want to use the word sell, but Brody was very protective over his character.
As he should have been.
What I've read in the book.
Reasons for that.
Right?
Yeah, reasons for that.
He worked fairly stiff, from what I understand.
Absolutely.
He had some problems with the invader who eventually murdered him in
Correct.
Puerto Rico.
There's a lot about that. I'm not sure everybody may know, but, you know.
He had that major problem, or that infamous cage match with Lex Luger in Florida in January 21st in 1987.
Mm-hmm.
In the middle of the match, Brody stopped working and stood around Luger and Bill Alfonso, who was the referee at the time.
Yep.
He spoke about it. he could go to the Monty and the Pharaoh page.
Hey, Daddy!
Playlist. He'll talk about that.
Yeah.
They were puzzled on what was going on with Brody. Basically, Luger, according to Wrestling at the Chase, went to Brody and said, "What did I do wrong?" And Brody said, "Nothing."
Right.
Thoughts?
You know, interestingly enough, I did watch this match in the last 24 hours a couple of times because I found it fascinating. Brody, there's a bunch of different stories about this particular incident. Brody now Luger was brand new basically at this point. You know that, right?
Yeah, yep.
Luger is basically just breaking in. And Brody had worked with him, I think, a time or two before that and felt that he wasn't selling for him. So I made special attention, made sure I paid special attention when I was watching the match back to see what he was getting at or why he would have thought that. Okay. And I do respect Bruiser Brody, so I was trying to keep an open mind as I watched the match. Okay, let me put it this way. One of Bruiser Brody's best moves, and it was a simple move, but man, was it great. It was effective. It was when he'd kick you in the face. And you saw how he would kick you in the face sometimes. And he could kick you in the face if you were standing. Mm-hmm. He'd kick you in the face if you were on your knees. But he would always follow through with that big, furry boot. And he would knock your block off. In the match with Luger, and I was watching other matches with much bigger guys like Abdullah the Butcher, who's he's one of the biggest guys ever. When Brody would deliver the boot, these guys would go down. They'd stay down. They would start to crawl or something like that. I noticed that when he gave Luger the boot, this young guy who clearly has the kind of look that a veteran would probably resent to begin with, pretty boy, big, built like Thor's statue. He hits him with a boot, and you could go and look at it, and you could say I could be wrong, but I do see him after the boot almost quickly start to pop his foot up like he's getting up. That would annoy the crap out of me if I'm Bruiser Brody. It would annoy me. It'd be like, what the stay down, kid. I just kicked you in the face, So at some point there, it must have just pissed him off so much that he just stopped. And Luger didn't know what to do. Luger was afraid of him. You know that, right?
I think a lot of people were afraid of him.
Luger was truly afraid of him. He described him as big, mean, and scary. So he was afraid. He was like, what on earth did I do? And it is true. And I have seen Luger speak about it afterwards. By the way, it's amazing how different Lex Luger is today as a person compared to what we know of the Lex Luger back in those days. But Luger did very politely go to him and say, what did I do wrong? And Brody said, look, man, it's been a long day. It's just one of those days. It's just one of those days. And he left it at that, Now,
do you think that attitude, though, right? Because guys we've talked to in the studio said that he would go from territory to territory. And, he was a draw, obviously. But
I didn't see multiple incidents of Bruiser Brody doing that. We would have probably seen or heard more about that. A lot of the footage I've seen is he's totally selling the same way his opponent is selling for him, whether it's Abdullah or one of his other, Cologne or one of his other famous, or Flair.
Now, did you watch some of his old WWF matches or WWF matches?
A little bit.
He did a lot of selling. A lot of selling, which surprised me, right?
Again, you know what's funny? And I think that Luger might have brought this out. The only reason we're talking about this all these years later is that someone happened to film this. Because in those days, it was already forgotten about. Nobody was talking about it in the business. It was just another match that had happened, but with the internet today, it has become a subject because it's controversial. For a lot of the people who love the independent style and the flying and the flipping and stuff, and the smaller guys, right. Bruiser Brody hated that stuff, and he said so. He was like, there is no way you can take 170. This was his words. You could take a 175-pound man and put him in the ring with a 300-pound man, which is what Bruiser Brody was in his prime, and you're going to tell me that this is going to be a contest? This is not going to be a contest. Wrestling is about force and might.
Do you think that...
And Bruiser Brody was the epitome of force and might. And no, a guy like Sami Zayn today against Bruiser Brody, one kick with that furry boot, and quite honestly, 1, 2, 3. Match over.
Do you think Brody, when he established himself in Japan, then changed his attitude in the States when he worked there in the States?
What would have made him do that?
Well,
they're even more physical in Japan, and that's probably
where big paydays, and he knew he could always go there. He felt he could dictate.
And the NWA didn't exactly not take care of him either. He was the booker for Texas.
Which Tony told us about, right?
Which is amazing. Bruiser Brody had a great mind for the business. And he did protect his. I don't blame him one bit. By the way, did you ever really think about this? Because reviewing him over the last couple of days, it really came clear to me. Andre the Giant, Abdullah the Butcher, Bruiser Brody. Guys like this were traveling attractions. They could go to Japan. Bruiser was one of them.
Say this never happened and he wasn't murdered.
Yeah.
During the Monday Night Wars, he would have been in his 40s.
Late 40s, knocking on 50's door. He probably would have Vince probably wouldn't have given him a look by the time Austin and Rock.
Where would he have ended up, or would he have ended up anywhere, being that he was this traveling show?
Of all the territories, I mean, if you look back on it, I know he enjoyed Japan. Obviously, Puerto Rico turned into what it turned into for him, and it's incredibly tragic. But he seemed to really love the Texas area, and I do think that, and he didn't seem to me like a guy who would just quickly just take the highest paycheck. He doesn't strike me that way. So I'm not so sure he would have been into Turner's, WCW. Who knows, man? He might have tried to form something himself. He was a booker. Maybe he becomes the Southern version of Paul Heyman and comes up with his own thing. Who knows what Bruiser Brody could have done?
You don't think he would have been a great draw for WrestleMania?
Here's the greatest crime. You're asking me what would have happened. You know what should have happened instead? Instead of being in Puerto Rico. It's the late 80s, right? How great would it have been, or maybe a year or two before, how great would it have been to have Bobby the Brain Heenan bring in Bruiser Brody to go with Hulk Hogan?
Incredible.
Come on.
Incredible.
What are we talking here? In a way, and I don't I don't think Vince has ever addressed it, or, why was there no interest to bring Bruiser Brody in on that level? Was he afraid that he wouldn't work with him behind the scenes?
You can't have
That's
a guy
possible.
doing business for his own in the WWF.
I'll tell you what, though, Vince has done it with other guys. A few years later, he's putting Warrior over. Look what that guy did to him. I don't see Brody doing that to Vince. Ric Flair said that of all the wrestlers he's ever come across, only one wrestler could last 60 minutes with Bruiser Brody.
Right.
And that's Kurt Angle.
Wow.
That was Ric Flair's, praise for how tough and how durable Bruiser Brody was.
Let's talk about the death and murder of Bruiser Brody.
Are you aware that the month before the incident with Brody in the locker room, that Invader #1 had just purchased a new home with his wife, and they had a swimming pool, and their 2-year-old child drowned in it?
Gorilla Monsoon owned part of that territory.
Right.
Gorilla Monsoon, Gino,
Right.
was selling his
Correct.
shares
Correct.
to Brody,
Correct.
which Cologne and
Supposedly.
Invader
Right.
did not want to happen.
Right.
Go ahead.
Supposedly, with the murmurings. Okay. So basically, there was that tragedy with the child. Also, according to Flair, Brody had beaten. Supposedly, Gonzalez wouldn't sell appropriately for Brody, so Brody beat him so badly he was in the hospital for a month. So
Really?
he was in a hospital for a month, and then his 2-year-old child drowns in the swimming pool 2 days before. And according to Flair, and you can understand where Flair was leading with these tragedies. He was like, man, that guy walked in the locker room and he was already gone. He couldn't even digest what had been happening to him. So now they go into the locker room, and he, politely asked to talk to Brody, according to legend, and they go into the showers, and from what Flair said, he heard, just like Tony said, they heard screams. The next thing you know, Tony's in there, and Brody is lying on the ground, and he's been basically sliced open, and he's dying. It took an hour for the officials, the ambulance and stuff to get to the arena because of the traffic outside. It's just so strange that how the case was over with and all the key witnesses weren't even called in.
Do you think the wrestlers in that locker room knew that Invader was going to gut Bruiser Brody in the shower?
At that particular moment, on that particular night, my gut read tells me that, and I hate thinking this, but this is what my gut read tells me. Cologne knew. Obviously, Invader knew what he was going to do. There might have been another person involved that might have known, but that I don't know.
Remember what Tony says, that they were kind of off course, and Savio said they were thrown off course because they wanted to kill him at the hotel.
Right.
And they got thrown off course here.
Right.
And again, let's not forget that Dutch Mantel ended up promoting for Puerto Rico afterwards, right?
What happened to the shares, by the way?
Don't know.
Isn't that something that we all need to find out? What happened to those shares? Who did they wind up going to? Or did Cologne take them all and now he had everything anyway? That would be a motive.
I mean, you brought it up a few times.
It's mine. Go, down.
Carlos Colon in the Hall of Fame.
I don't get at all. That I don't get at all. Unless Vince doesn't think he's got anything to do with it. Do you think Vinny even thought about stuff like that? He must have. They think about all of that
Jack
stuff.
Haynes is in studio and said that,
Oh, you
Vince
mean-
McMahon had his hands in it.
Billy Jack McMahon, you mean? That's
Billy
Vince is
Jack
his
McMahon-
father.
Explain to the fans.
Billy
out there.
Jack said, I can't even explain. You need a roadmap to connect, Billy. What are you talking
Billy
about?
Jack claimed,
He goes from
Billy
cottage
Jack
cheese
claims
to
that
evolution
Vince McMahon
to...
Senior is his true biological father.
Right, something to do with Kennedy back in the day? I don't know what's going on.
Where is Bruiser Brody weigh in or end up being in the annals of wrestling fans? And why do wrestling fans so interested in Bruiser Brody? And then again, why is the WWE not even at least did a documentary on Bruiser Brody?
Well, they probably don't touch any of that because of the murder, because WWE doesn't touch anything controversial. I think that there's a fascination with Brody because of his untimely demise. Unfortunately, that's always attached to it. But in general, he would have been remembered one way or the other as a great main eventer and a great wrestler. He was magic. He really was. He was fantastic. They don't make them like that anymore. They really don't.
Do you wish you would have got more Bruiser Brody, like growing up, that you would have got to know more about him and watch him more?
I would have preferred a lot more Bruiser Brody and a lot less Bob Backlund.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, really.
You know, Backlund.
Yeah, really.
Backlund
And
against
I'm not
Brody.
knocking Bob Backlund.
Backlund against
That
Brody would have been hot.
That
right?
would have been great. How about Brody crushing Bob Backlund and winning a belt, holding it for like 6 months? That would have been nice. You know? What's so wrong with that?
Are you ready? Wrestling fans, are you ready?
All right, to start a show, Jimmy Farrow is going to go over the rules with head-to-head.
All right, ladies and gents, here we go, head-to-head. The following criteria is necessary for this competition. The first category will be mic skills for those at home. You know, how good are you on a stick, as you said.
As I say.
You know, how do we talk to the crowd? Are we a natural, or are we just good at what we do? Criteria number 2 is mat skills. You know, like you got your Bret Harts in this world, and then you got your Giant Gonzaleses. Do I need to explain that? If I do, oh boy. All right.
You've got trouble.
Yeah. Number 3, overall influence on the industry. We all know that, you know, certain wrestlers have definitely left a much bigger thumbprint than others.
So, for example, Bruiser Brody.
He
left a huge influence on this industry.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We also have it, criteria number 4, the, as I like to call it, the back of the baseball card. That is your resume, how many championships, things like Money in the Bank, you know, if you're a WWE guy, Royal Rumble, etc., etc. And the final subject in the competition is something called the It Factor. And I would like to think that most of us know what that is, you know, whether it's... you know, Hulk Hogan or Ultimate Warrior.
I used the
or,
example last
you know,
week of the It Factor.
You have a certain thing about
the
you?
Andre the Giant documentary.
Yeah.
At some point, they start showing some wrestlers, and there's this clip of superstar Billy Graham doing a flex.
Mm-hmm.
My wife, who's no fan of wrestling, said, "Ooh, who's that?"
There you go.
And that is the It Factor.
There you go.
All right, let's talk about our first contestant, Mr. Mil Mascaris. Jimmy?
All righty, ladies and gentlemen. Born way back in 1942, Mexican luchador. He is regarded as one of the greatest lucha libre fellas of all time. A Mexican legend, of course, along with El Santo and Blue Demon. You know, I don't have to go through all of this to, like, basically let you know, of course, the Man of 1,000 Masks is quite possibly the first legitimate lucha libre star that crossed over into Vince's territory. That's for sure.
Yep.
It didn't matter back in the day where Mil Mascaris went. Mil Mascaris was basically a main event guy, and he used to come to town once in a while. We got to see him. Of course, he's been inducted to multiple Hall of Fames. He was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame back in 2012. Mil Mascaris is an absolute freaking legend. I can basically leave it at that. You know how big...
Was Mil Mascaris fall into that Andre the Giant, Abdullah Butcher,
somewhat,
Bruiser Brody,
absolutely,
traveling carny guy that people
one of them.
wanted to see?
Yeah, didn't matter where he went, and he would draw.
Look,
That guy would draw.
For me, Mil Mascaris. Look, we were at the big event a couple of years back, right, with our table.
Right.
We went and got a picture with Mil Mascaris because he was that important to us.
You know what's
right?
amazing? That he agreed to take the picture.
Yeah, well, that's
Because
trouble in itself,
as you
right?
dive deeper into Mill, you find out that Mill wasn't exactly very fond of losing.
Well, he was kind of like
Ever.
he was Brody-ish.
He was
right?
Brody-ish.
He would not lose
That's
his
right.
matches.
He protected his image, and he went globally. He went everywhere, and he put fannies everywhere, no
Let me
matter
ask
where
you,
he went.
when he wrestled Superstar Graham in Madison Square Garden those 2 times,
Yeah.
he ended up losing that second match, right? Did he lose by pinfall?
Did he lose?
I don't know. He did lose.
I know that there was a lot of countouts that Mill would get victories with. Oh, you got counted out to me win.
Tell the fans a story where we went to the Battle Royal.
God. Really? All right. Well, it was me, my partner here, and another fella that we went to school with. And I think his pop took us.
Right.
He was a very cool guy. And he took us to Madison Square Garden to see, was that Morocco Backlund?
It was Morocco.
Okay, so we went to the Garden to see Morocco Backlund, but also there was a very exciting at the time. Battle Royals were very, very special and very exciting back in those days. So there was a Battle Royal, and Mil Mascaris was in the Battle Royal. Now, the friend that we went with, his favorite wrestler was Mil Mascaris.
Yep.
He absolutely loved Mil Mascaris.
And the cool thing about Mascaris, he had the mask on, he'd take it off, he had another mask on.
He had another
right?
mask on. What about the cape he used to wear,
Oh,
too?
awesome.
The cape was fantastic.
He was a superhero.
He was a superhero.
With his chest out. Right?
Yep. Yeah. Oh, he was in tremendous shape.
Absolutely.
Oh, my God. He was built like a statue. And the flying body press back then, come on, I know everybody flips today, but that was
Right.
exciting. A flying body press back then was like, wow, check out Captain Ariel.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So anyway, during the Battle Royal, the bell rings, ding! The next thing you know, Mascaris is out.
And back to the locker room.
He gets thrown out, and the look on our friend's face was like somebody had just stolen all 4 of his puppies. It was like, I'm going to take the last one, too. And I never forgot the disappointment. We found out years and years later that Mil Mascaris, if he wasn't going to win something, got in and got out.
Took a powder.
That's it. I'm out. So this poor, we were
So
just.
you went to see Mil
We were
Mascaris.
just like 12 at the time, and our friend was crushed. Boy, if he knew that one, we know now. You're right.
Let's talk about contestant number 2.
Oh my
the
God.
Viper, Randy Orton.
Randall Keith Orton. Hey, he's going to be 41 soon. Wow.
Getting old.
We know that Randy Orton, of course, is a legendary WWE legend, of course. Boy, there's just so many things you could say about him. Of course, he comes from a family of wrestlers. The grandfather, Bob Orton, his father, Cowboy Bob, who we've had on.
Yep.
Cowboy Bob Orton Jr. Of course, his Uncle Barry. That's a whole nother story. There is nothing that Randy Orton has not accomplished in his career. And he came up basically through the minors, if you will. He's almost like, he's not Derek Jeter, but Derek Jeter came up through the minors of the Yankees. He came up through the minors of Vince, and he's always been there. He's just been there for 20 years almost at this point. He was the youngest world champion at the time that he won the World Heavyweight Championship at 24. Look, say what you will, but the RKO is one of the greatest finishers ever, man. How many different times have we seen the RKO?
So many of the pro wrestling experts talk about Randy Orton as half.
They hate him.
The majority of his matches.
Yeah, right.
What are your thoughts on that?
I don't agree with that. There might have been a time or two where you could say somebody mailed it in, but I've seen. Look, do you realize how many times a year these guys go out there? What the hell are we talking about? If you can point out 1 or 2 times in a guy's entire career, like, oh, look, he's... How many thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of matches Randy Orton's had? Come on.
You could argue that Randy Orton's best work has been during this COVID era.
He's done some great work during this COVID era. Randy Orton is, to me, a very unappreciated pro. He's a great villain. Mm-hmm. He's gotten better and better on the mic over the years.
Right,
He's had some killer.
Let's get to it, the head-to-head competition. You ready?
All right,
Mil
might as well.
Mascaris against Randy Orton, mic skills.
Oh, that's it's funny. A lot of the times Randy Orton would be in trouble in this category, but he's not. He's not here. Mil Mascaris didn't have mic skills, and Randy can do just fine. So yeah, that's Randy.
Okay, Matt skills.
You agree, right?
I agree.
Come on, stop.
Matt skills. Randy Orton. Mil Mascaris.
Randy Orton hasn't beat. The one flying body press doth not a repertoire make.
Wow, this is like a blowout already.
No, calm down. We're not done yet.
overall.
You agree with Matt Skills, though? I want to make sure
I agree with Matt Skills.
You're
And
with
fans,
me
you guys
here.
could weigh in if you disagree.
You know, but let's really think about this. Mike Skills, stop. Matt Skills, a flying body press was really the one thing. Don't tell me Randy Orton does not have more in his arsenal than that. Stop. Okay, how about
overall influence on the industry?
Mascaras.
Why?
Do you realize how many luchas have come since him and the road that he opened, the door he opened for the Rey Mysterios and everybody else? Oh, my God. No way, ands, or ifs about it. Randy Orton is a legend. Randy Orton has done many things. There is not a sea of new Randy Orton showing up that wrestle and look and want to be like Randy Orton, but Mil Mascaras opened a floodgate for a whole genre. Mil Mascaras wins this number 3 by a mile.
I agree with you. So we got 2-1 right now. Back of the baseball card.
Well, this is where Randy clinches this competition because there is no competition. Randy Orton has held every damn belt in the WWE, and it's no competition. I'm sorry. You know, if Mil had been more willing to work with people and he might have won a world title or two.
Maybe stayed within
or
the
even if he
organization.
turned the belt back 6 days later, like Antonio Inoki could say he was world champion several times.
Fair enough.
In the NWA and the WWF.
Fair enough.
You know, do business a little better to get your resume.
So you
Not that
almost
Mil
think-
needed it. He
you
didn't
almost
need it.
think that Mil and Brody, if they just would have did business a little better, things could have been a little different.
I can't say better. I just think that if they had been more willing to play ball, perhaps, with the way the Vinces and the Turners do, then maybe they would have had a belt or two more.
How about the
heavyweight.
it factor?
Mascaras.
By far.
By far.
So on the two
By
levels,
far.
on 2 levels, overall influence of the industry, the it factor, Mil Mascaras blowing them away.
Yep.
But we got to give the competition to the
On
Viper,
points, yeah.
Randy Orton.
On points, it's 3-2. That's basically it. You know. It
All
was
right.
interesting, though. I'll tell you that. That was an interesting matchup.
All right. Well,
You know what would happen if they wrestled, though? Vince would tell Mil, you're going to lose, and it would be a 5-second match.
And it'll be over.
Yeah, he just didn't win an RKO.
Farrell, any parting words?
Just thanks for hanging with us. We always appreciate you guys letting us come into your living room every week. And until
It is an honor. It is an honor.
It sure is. And until next week, as I always say, later.